was confused about whether it was enough. She yelled that she had shown him the most valuable treasure. On the other side, he asked about the price he had to pay for this, as it couldn't be free. She agreed with him, telling him a few conditions to join her sect, including that he had to be baptized by the cardinal. However, they would always ensure his safety over anything once he joined them. He asked whether being baptized by the cardinal was the same type of magic as the inscription palace's darkness, which could limit his magic. She answered affirmatively, telling him that it was mandatory for every member before joining. However, he once again declined, stating he didn't have evil attributes, and said he was now going to take a rest. She smugly asked whether he thought he had any other choice but to join her sect, as she had already told him many of their secrets. He turned with the same expression, asking whether she thought she could hold him by herself. However, suddenly someone appeared in front of him, exclaiming that what if he would join her? Joe was startled to see this person approaching them out of nowhere. He also didn't notice his powerful aura. Then he noticed his resemblance to the Ming siblings and assumed he must be their father. He also assumed he must be a first-generation evil attributes master. Ming-Wu, Ming-Hua's father, introduced himself as the former vice-marshal of the Philip Empire. He asked Joe to have a chat with him. Joe thought he had no chance against someone powerful like Ming-Wu. Ming-Wu even put a lot of pressure on him just by talking. Ming-Wu shared that Ming-Hua had told him about Joe's case. He had also heard that Joe was a manifestation master, which was impressive. Then he informed Joe that he was in charge of the Tianxie sect in the Philip Empire. He assured him that he could level up to 9 jewels or more if he joined their sect. He also added that Joe had a chance to become the next master of the sect with his ability. He then assured him that he wouldn't be bound by any contract, as the baptism would be like a superficial rite in his case. He then threateningly asked whether this was enough for him, as if he would deny, he wouldn't have any choice but to keep him there by force for the sake of his sect. He added that Joe seemed like a smart person who knew what to do. Joe was nervous because he didn't expect someone so powerful to come to deal with him. He then observed Ming-Wu, who had 9 jewels and was an upper grandmaster with white physical attributes similar to his. However, his jewel was made of ice attribute jadeite. Besides, he had an evil attribute, a mental jewel, so Joe didn't have a chance against someone like him. While Ming-Wu observed Joe's calm demeanor, which could be the reason for his win against Ming-Hua before. He was thankful to have come here himself because he didn't think someone other than him could deal with Joe. At that point, Joe sighed and admitted having evil attributes and the demonic change skill. Ming-Hua was quite happy to see him admit it, because she thought he would fight until the end. Her father shut her up, forbidding her from saying anything further. Then Ming-Wu warned Joe to answer some questions without resistance because he didn't want to kill someone as talented as him. Joe remarked that he indeed feared death, but he valued his freedom as well. However, he didn't want to make a reckless move. Ming-Wu asked about his thoughts on making a bet. Joe replied that Ming-Wu was the most formidable enemy he had ever faced, but he wanted to learn from him. He then further told him about the bet. Joe proposed that he would run to the wall of Philip City, and after 3 seconds Ming-Wu could chase him. If Ming-Wu caught him, Joe would join the sect, and vice versa if Joe won. He also swore on his inborn jewel that he wouldn't reveal what they had discussed during the night. Ming-Wu agreed to his terms but warned him to join the sect without a fuss if he failed. Then Joe had started to run away and activated all of his death points in order to win the bet and get his freedom once again. After 3 seconds, Ming-Wu started his chase. On the other side, Joe was very close to the wall. He had looked behind and observed the big underworld flower, which was 10 times bigger than Ming-Hua. On the other hand, Ming-Wu exclaimed that all of his tricks were useless against him and was about to get him. He had shot suction power toward Joe, which he didn't think he could escape from. He had used the space slash to counterattack Ming-Wu. Ming-Wu recognized the skill from the Silver Emperor Sky Falcon. He remembered that Tai Yi Palace got the beast some time ago. At that, he wondered about this connection to Joe. Meanwhile, Joe had prepared a bow and arrow with space slash and was ready to attack him. Suddenly, Ming-Wu felt that he couldn't move and didn't understand what trick Joe had used on him. Joe was running at fast speed because the slowing down would only last for 3 seconds. This kind of ability was so powerful that even a 9-jewel master couldn't resist it. He was ready to go past the wall to win. After a while, he was shown taking a sigh of relief as he had crossed the wall. He was happy that he had escaped and managed to trap Ming-Wu at the last moment. Now he was ready to hide. But Ming-Wu got him while complimenting him that he wasn't an ordinary guy, as he had escaped from his hand. Joe assured him that he won't tell a soul anything about them as he had promised before. Ming-Wu complimented him for having a spatial skill with the Silver Emperor, which could kill him in 3 seconds. Joe reminded him that it was late at night and he needed to get back. However, he apologized to Joe as he was going to break his promise in order to get Joe's power for his sect. By observing his stance, Joe had concluded that no matter what, Ming-Wu must take him, but he needed Zhou so he would not kill him. So there was a chance for him to escape. Then he was ready to start a fight. Meanwhile, Mingwu was sorry for breaking his promise. Then he had planned for Zhou to shoot as many arrows as he could to vent out his anger. When he would run out of his power, he wouldn't be able to escape. When Zhou shot an arrow at him, Mingwu realized with shock that Zhou's arrow had a thunder aspect. His body was now paralyzed. Not only this arrow had a double skill of space prison. He thought about the amazing skill of Zhou, which made him attracted to him. He then witnessed another arrow which had attributes of wind. Mingwu cursed that he was completely controlled by Zhou. However, he thought that Zhou must be exhausted after using numerous skills. He had seen another arrow coming, but without any attribute. He concluded that now Zhou was completely out of his energy. Zhou was frustrated on the other side. Then suddenly Zhou was rushing towards him, which he observed was a cayenne light with wind attributes. He wondered why Zhou didn't use a control skill just now. He concluded that it must be Zhou's last attack. It was a storm attack with wind attributes from the ice bear that he had defeated first. Suddenly, he was shocked to see the change in Zhou, and concluded that he was using demonic change. However, he noticed Zhou's eyes hadn't changed, which meant he was using demonic change with control. He then observed Zhou's dark golden great equipment scroll and wondered how many surprises Zhou had for him. Then he decided to take this attack seriously and was ready to counterattack. However, Mingwu didn't use his full power because he was feeling guilty, and secondly, he assumed Zhou had run out of energy. Additionally, Mingwu had underestimated his opponent, resulting in Zhou using his spatial shift at the last moment at close range. He hit Mingwu with a double hammer directly from his side. Mingwu didn't have much time to dodge, so he counterattacked with his hand. This resulted in Zhou hitting him directly in his arm with a full blow. Consequently, Mingwu was at a disadvantage even with all his power. Manhua, on the other hand, was shocked to see that Zhou could actually hurt her father with only 3 jewels. Suddenly, Mingwu collapsed because he ran out of energy. Manhua asked about Mingwu's well-being. Mingwu admitted that he was really hurt as he had underestimated Zhou. While looking at Zhou, he admitted his defeat. Then he complimented Zhou for surpassing him and offered him the chance to take his revenge on him one day. However, suddenly someone entered the scene, asking about betrayal being a thing for his heavenly cult. She added that although self-proclaimed was not evil, it didn't bring any good. Mingwu was tense to notice that he hadn't detected her presence even with his cultivation base. He then noticed her 6-jewel cultivation base with alexandrite jewels. Meanwhile, Zhou thought that she was beautiful, but felt some familiar feelings with her that he couldn't place. He noticed her jewel, but his energy was running out, resulting in him going unconscious. Mingwu asked about her identity, but suddenly realized that she was from Snowlord Mountain. She tried to shoo him away as she had her eyes on Zhou. Mingwu exclaimed that the peak number 1 in the Northern Territory was equivalent to the number 1 crime in the Western Territory. She replied that her name was Tian'er. She added that although Zhou was stronger than her, he was injured right now. Even if they both joined forces, they wouldn't be able to beat her. She added threateningly that crime number 1 in the West wouldn't exist anymore. Manhua tried to protest, but Mingwu stopped her, telling her that she was the person whom Snowlord Mountain liked the most. He then turned to Tian'er and requested her to keep everything that happened tonight a secret. He ordered his daughter to leave despite her protests. After they had left, Tian'er brought the Snow Sky Falcon. Then she started to beat Zhou for going overboard and causing havoc, even with the evil sect. She then turned to the bird and asked it to take its token to Snowlord Mountain as it was too dangerous to live there. She added that her father would take care of it, and reminded it not to indiscriminately kill innocent people. On the other side, Manhua reminded her father that they belonged to the 5 holy places of this world. Mingwu explained that their sect was at 5th rate in terms of power. They were not a match for them. Moreover, the might of 10,000 beasts could be compared to the power of a human empire because it was the power of Snow Mountain. The 4 Holy Lands couldn't defeat them. Besides, if the girl dared to call the evil sect leader by his name, she must belong to a powerful background. He also expressed his doubt regarding Tian'er being only the daughter of the Snowlord Mountain King. If they were to take Zhou by force, they would be making an enemy out of the Snow Mountain King. Consequently, it would bring trouble to their sect. Manhua was still reluctant to let go of the matter. However, Mingwu reasoned with her that power determined everything and they had no choice today. Then he nervously requested his daughter to seduce Zhou in order for him to join their cult, which she furiously denied. He still emphasized that he didn't like this aspect of sacrificing his daughter, but she had to do it for the prosperity of their sect. He was sure that Zhou would be enchanted by her beauty. Another scene showed Zhou sitting somewhere while his cat was lying in front of him. He wondered about the place he was and the miracle that all of his injuries had been healed. He assumed that the girl had saved him, but he was determined not to betray Shangguan. Meanwhile, at the academy, a third-year student named Ye Paupa approached Joe. He asked about his business. Ye apologized on behalf of his subordinate who had offended him. Joe accepted his apology. Ye continued, saying that he had heard about Joe making manifestation scrolls and was interested in buying some from him at 20% higher than the market price. Joe replied that he had 5 scrolls for sale. Ye could check them out if he wanted. However, he could only sell 2 scrolls to him as he had already promised to sell another 3 to Tai Yin Palace. Ye was excited to see that they were intermediate-level scrolls, which Joe admitted. Joe thought while looking at him that he was worried that he would be bothered by him. He further assumed Ye belonged to the Ye family. He agreed to do business with him after realizing Ye's good attitude towards him. Afterwards, Ye chose 2 scrolls and was ready to pay 450,000 coins for them. Joe was awestruck to know that these scrolls were worth this much. Ye gave him 500,000 and told him to keep the remaining money for another transaction. Joe happily thanked him for the generous purchase and promised to make another sale with him next time. Both exchanged goodbyes happily. Shangguan pointed out that it could be their trick, which he shook off because he was too happy to have the money. Afterwards, Rui called him boss, which made him nervous. He ordered him not to call him boss because it made him feel like he was the boss of bandits, so they should call him by his first name. However, Rui insisted on calling him boss while handing him the list of his new subordinates, except for the 4 jewel masters. They were 9 physical-type jewel masters. Rui added that after yesterday's opening ceremony, his reputation had been rising. During that time, all the noble students were gathered to give lectures, one of whom was Xiao Shi, who warned everyone not to bother him. Now he had become the hero of the commoner students like them. Now he understood that it was the work of teacher Xiao, and this was the reason Ye Paupa came to apologize to him. Then he handed Rui an intermediate-level equipment scroll as they didn't have one. The commoner students were shocked to see his generosity because it cost 150,000 silver coins. Joe added that Rui was the first student who had helped him, so he made it according to his jewels, which were divided into modes of coordination and dexterity. Now Rui could use the bow equipment scroll to good use, as his older one was useless. Rui got emotional after receiving such a gift from him. After a while, Manhua entered the class and told everyone to go to their seats. Joe noticed that Manhua was not injured, which meant that the woman from last night didn't fight with them. Besides, Minghua's face showed that she wanted to pretend last night didn't happen at all, so he needed to act as well. She announced to everyone that there was an exam going on and told him to distribute the papers. Joe didn't understand the reason behind an exam on the first day. Maybe it was to determine their extent of knowledge. Someone whispered in his ear that he had to help him because he had failed the military academy entrance exams. At that, he retorted that he had at least attended elementary school, but Joe didn't. Manhua interjected that the exam was conducted in order to determine their extent of knowledge and that they would be cleaning the toilet for a week if they failed. Then she tried to quiet them up and warned them not to cheat. Otherwise, they would be given 0 points. Joe regretted coming on the first day as it would be embarrassing to clean the toilet if he failed. Joe had distributed the exam papers. During the exam, he was under the close watch of Manhua, so they didn't have any chance of cheating and gave up on it. Now it was all in their fate. He went outside after submitting his exam paper to get some fresh air. He met teacher Xiao outside, who was looking for him as well. Joe thanked him for his favor yesterday and asked about his business with him. Xiao informed him that it was the dean who wanted him in her office. Subsequently, he went to the dean's office and greeted her. He asked whether he was there because of fighting. She told him that he was there for some inquiry, and she had read his written test paper and didn't agree with the assessment of Mingyu, which confused Joe. The dean added that although Mingyu was great and had extraordinary achievements, his method was weak. That's why Joe was given higher points, because he had suited his taste. But it was different from the typical academy standard. Joe tried to assure her that he would study hard in the military academy. The dean suggested he go to the Jewel Master Academy, as he had a knack for becoming an equipment scroll master. Joe clarified that it was his father who wanted him to learn military command while thinking that the dean didn't like him. The dean knew his father. Joe added that it was because his father wanted him to inherit his position in the military, so he had entered the military academy. Dean deadpanned that she didn't want him to stay at the military academy for one reason. He could take away civilian students with his skills. She added that he was such a good scroll master that she could recommend him to the Jewel Master Academy, which should have a place for him. Joe thought that he needed to negotiate with her as she was watching his every move. He started to remark about his amazing equipment scroll skill, so she shouldn't let go of such talent from her hands. She retorted that in this case, she would regret it if he took away her country's future general. At that, he tried to make her understand his true value. He unleashed his power and showed her his dark golden light, which was a legendary equipment scroll, equivalent to the divine being level. Meanwhile, The dean was shocked to see Joe having such an equipment scroll, which showed his potential. Joe asked her if she recognized the legendary equipment scroll.